Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to History, Lesson 142. Today we're going to start with a review of your presidents. So let's go ahead and take a look at your United States presidents. Remember, they are in order from the first president, George Washington Bush, to our last president, Donald Trump. And remember, we are only going to memorize their last name for this particular purpose. You should know all of them with their first and last name, but for this purpose, we are going to sing a song that requires last name. So let's listen first, and then we can sing it together.
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, and Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Polk, and Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln, Johnson, Grant, and Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland, McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama.
And Trump. Remember that this was recorded before Trump was in office, so don't forget to add Trump. Okay, boys and girls, let's move on to a quick review, things that you should have read about in your last lesson. Do you remember Germany? Okay, Germany was the country that wanted to expand and get bigger. The only way to do that was for him to bulk up his army and his navy, and he was going to take over some other countries. Well, some of the other countries got mad. They decided that they were going to go on his side, and some countries decided, no, we better stay against him. And so they gave those countries names. Let's see if you remember. The countries that were on the side of Germany, we call those countries Central Powers, right? And the countries that were against Germany, we call those Allied Powers. And those countries that did not want to get involved, they didn't want to pick a side, we call them neutral nations. Excellent. Remember the leader the leader of Germany during this time? His name was Francis Ferdinand. Very good. Okay. Do you remember the Archduke of Austria-Hungary? And he was assassinated. He was murdered. Do you remember him? That's what the start of the war was, because he was murdered. His name was, oh, I got that wrong. I mixed that up, didn't I? His name was Ferdinand. That's who was killed, who was murdered. But the leader of Germany, I'm so sorry, was Kaiser Wilhelm II. Let's make sure we get that straight. The leader of Germany was Kaiser Wilhelm II, but the person who was murdered to start the war, was the reason of the start of the war, is Archduke Ferdinand. Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to talk a little bit about what happened next. Okay, Germany decided that they were going to create these things called U-boats. Now, even though we see them today all the time, we call them submarines. It was a new concept for them back then. They decided that they were going to build this underwater ship so that they can do sneak attacks. And they called those at the time U-boats, but today we call them submarines. Well, they were very important back then. What happened was they were going to do this sneak attack on this boat, called the Lusitania. Now, the Lusitania was a ship, but it was just a passenger ship. It was from England, and it had all different kinds of people on it, but it was not, involved in the military or anything like that. So it was just a passenger ship, just people, minding their business. Maybe they were taking a trip across the sea. It wasn't a fighting ship at all. And so the Germans shot this ship down, and it was like a sneak attack. So nobody knew who did it. And what happened is that Germany decided that they were going to ask Mexico. And they wrote a letter to the people in Mexico asking them for help, asking them to help them fight in the war. And what they were going to do was they were going to give them some more land. They promised them land over in America. land like Texas and Arizona. But that wasn't their land to give. They said, if you help us, we're going to give you this land. Well, the Americans found out about it, and that's when America decided that they would finally get involved in the war. And when they did get involved in the war, it wasn't long after that the war ended that we were able to win the war, because the Americans, they weren't as tired as the other people who were fighting in the war, because they had just entered the war. The other nations that were in the war were in the war long years and years and years, but Americans getting in, they weren't so tired out, and so the war ended in 1918, November 11th. And that's actually the day that we celebrate Veterans Day, on November 11th each year. And we celebrate that so that we can honor those who fought in this war and other wars, in the armed forces. Okay. Um, it was Woodrow Wilson, our president at the time, who decided that he was going to that it would be a good idea for all these countries to come together and decide that they were going to make this pact that they weren't going to fight each other. They were all going to be on the same side, and all these countries coming together. They called those the League of Nations. But you know what's interesting is that the United States didn't join the League of Nations, even though it was Woodrow Wilson's idea. We didn't join. And you're going to read in your textbook that the reason that he didn't join the League of Nations was that it was held over in Geneva, Switzerland, and that's on the other side of the world. And so Woodrow Wilson decided it wouldn't be a great idea for us to join. We'd probably be safer just sticking to ourselves. So I want you to go ahead and make sure that you read those few pages and answer the comprehension check questions to yourself on 17A in your textbook. Tomorrow you do have a quiz, so there will be no video. Make sure that you study for that quiz. Okay, we will see you back for lesson 144. Have a great day.